Okay. Okay. So he's on in 30 seconds. Okay, you're on in 30 seconds.
Okay, what about this
Okay,
on my arm?
I don't think he knocked the picture.
Thanks, I think we got it. You want me to stay on the phone until you get started?
Yeah, but I need this picture on it to get my arm out of there.
Go ahead.
There, okay. I got too enthusiastic.
Let's turn that around. There's that.
So that you get the picture, see?
There's... Okay, how's that look?
That looks perfect. You got that?
I'm out of here.
You're out of here? You going?
No, I'll be here. Just if you need
Oh, you were
anything,
talking to him.
I'll be sitting here in the what's it called?
Yeah, what do you call it?
So you're on in like 10 seconds. So you should be able to start talking now.
What's the cue?
I don't think there is one.
Hello, I'm Bill Turner, and this is one of the few physically absent sessions I've had with COPA. And I wish to thank John Judge, who's done a tremendous job, and it's not an easy job. Thanks, John. I hope you notice that there's a red framed picture of John Kennedy on my left shoulder. This is a poster that was given out for the Supreme Court of the state of Rio de Janeiro in 1991 when there was a conference down there on the case. And I bring it to your attention because the chief judge of the court opened up the session by saying, we are not here to judge whether there's a conspiracy or not. We know there's a conspiracy. We want to get at it. That's the attitude of the Supreme Court of the state of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and that's the attitude around the world of other countries. And I don't know why we're so delinquent. The Earl Warren report is not meant to be the final word, according to Earl's nephew, who lives in California. He meant it to be the temporizing document until new leads come in that justify reopening the case. So with that in mind, I will present some new evidence. Time for new evidence. By his presence in New Orleans in the summer of 1963, Oswald was walking the walk, displaying pro-Castro signs and handing out pro-Castro literature on the waterfront. After he undertook his JFK investigation, District Attorney Jim Garrison asked me to come down because the paramilitary right was figuring in his investigation. I was planning on an informant who had defected from the Minutemen. His name was Jerry Milton Brooks. He had a photo-retentive memory, and he reeled off the curriculum vitae of key players. One such was Maurice Gatlin, who used Brooks as a courier to deliver $100,000 to the organization Secret Army, the secret army organization of the French military, which was out gunning for de Gaulle. In fact, the French president was ambushed at one of those circular traffic merges and escaped only through the quick action of his driver. In 1968, de Gaulle honored Garrison and his key players with the words, Je suis très sensible de la confiance que vous m'exprimez. It was meant for the concentric circle of investigators who have carried on the truth through the years. Eh bien, sur appliqué aujourd'hui, and we're into the current one, which is the same. Jim, I'm sure the President of France would honor those who are currently carrying on the task. I immediately went to a street number given me by the Minutemen defector, Jerry Milton Brooks. It was 519 West Lafayette Place, and just off the fringes of downtown in New Orleans. And that supposedly was the office of a guy by the name of Guy Bannister, a retired FBI executive who ran intelligence operations in conjunction with Maurice Gatlin. One of their operations was a diversionary strike by the vessel Santa Ana during the time period of the Bay of Pigs invasion. This, of course, establishes a linkage to the CIA. In fact, a witting insider put Bannister at the epicenter of this very special group controlling intelligence activities in the Caribbean region. The Lafayette Place doorway had a sticker on it, which will date this for you. Nascent Republican Party of Louisiana. And if you took that doorway and went up the stairs, there was a pair of stairs there. It had offices on the second floor. Now, when I was there of course, was nobody occupying it. Bannister was long dead. This was in 1968. There was a corner building, which if you walk down the stairs, lo and behold, the address of this entrance was stamped on some of Lee Harvey Oswald's literature he distributed that summer, 544 Camp Street, which Oswald had stamped on some of the pro-Castro literature. This caused an uproar in the Bannister office. Bannister told a puzzled secretary, Delphine Roberts, he's one of ours, referring to the infiltrators he had on the Tulane campus. But Oswald had Marine Corps experience, so he was selected to infiltrate the militant right of the action groups, and the DRE was the one in particular that was selected, but they joined forces with Alpha 66 on occasion. What concerned Bannister client CIA was an item in the local daily newspaper dated August 1st, 1963, that the FBI raided a rural arms depot and detained a number of men under the Neutrality Act. As a result of the missile crises, the settlement, JFK had instructed the FBI to vigorously enforce the act. The result was agency schizophrenia, and Bannister working for the FBI and CIA at the same time. And the DRE, which is the Cuban Student Directorate, which was organized many years ago in Cuba, John Cock Jean was their presence at this rendezvous at the house near Lake Pontchartrain. The property was owned by Mike McClaney, who had been proprietor of the casino in the Nacional Hotel, where Meyer Lansky headquartered. When I asked McClaney, this was years ago, his relationship with Lansky, he growled and said, I only met him once for 30 seconds. But he was kind enough, this is McClaney, to offer me a drink, which I was kind enough to accept. The reason the CIA put out a work order for Oswald's services was that it was planning a second invasion called the Second Naval Guerrilla under Artemi, Manuel Artemi, that is, a veteran officer of the Bay of Pigs invasion. At this point, matters became complex. Artemi was handling Rolando Cubella, a founder of the DRE, and he was handling him in a assassination by poisoning plot meant to be carried out because of the access that Cubella had to the president of Cuba. Artemi was handling Marine Manual and all, boasting of a new plot to blow up the Huey P. Long Bridge. Oswald was making this representation to Carlos Brinier, the chapter head of the DRE in the Crescent City, handing out pro-Castro literature as an altercation. And Oswald said, "Go ahead and hit me, Carlos." Oswald had blown his cover. So the next thing we know, when Oswald arrived back in Dallas, his hometown, there was an outbreak of weapons thefts, National Guard armory burglaries, and arms trading. And Oswald was onto it. He rented a room in the Oak Cliff section and adopted the alias of O.H. Lee. He penetrated the Dallas DRE. According to Deputy Sheriff Buddy Walters in a report filed just after the JFK murder, quote, "For the past few months at a house at 3128 Harlandale, some Cubans have been having meetings on the weekend and were possibly connected with the Freedom for Cuba committee of which Oswald was a member." 3 days later, the deputy added that he learned somewhere between 7 days and before the president was shot and 1 day after the president was shot, these Cubans moved. My informant stated that the subject Oswald had been by the house before. The safe house on Harlandale was also in the Oak Cliff section. It had been rented in June 1963 by one Manuel O. Rodriguez in the name of the Committee to Free Cuba. Rodriguez, a pathological Kennedy hater, acted at the bequest of Andre Sargent of Miami, the top gun in the Alpha 66 action group. It is noted that there were interchangeable moving parts among the action groups of the day. To illustrate, John Thomas Mason, an ardent member of the Minutemen in Dallas, was, according to a government source, attempting to buy arms, machine guns, bazookas, and other equipment to be used in a second invasion mounted by the DRE. 5 days before the assassination, when New Orleans teletype clacked out an urgent message from headquarters that a Cuban faction militant revolutionary group may attempt to assassinate President Kennedy when he arrives in Dallas. All officers were to contact the informants they had for information. This is an obvious reference to the DRE and Oswald informant shortly before the FBI agents James Hosty and W. Harlan Brown, both assigned to Neutrality Act probes, had contacted Oswald's wife Marina in an effort to locate Lee. My source in Dallas disclosed that Hosty and Brown were listing Oswald as a potential security informant known inside the bureaus of PSI. The PSI is a person in a position to furnish information that the FBI imposes a quota system on the agents. This someone like Oswald might be written up as a PSI while furnishing nothing. This appears to be the case with Oswald. He walked into the Dallas FBI office with an angry note telling the Bureau to stay away from, and indeed permanently, Oswald's wife. He didn't want his cover blown again. When the assassination came down, the special agent in charge of the Dallas FBI office had the note flushed down the toilet. Oswald realized when the assassination came down on that noonday Friday that he had been set up. He grabbed the cab of William Whaley and headed for the boarding house. Police officer Tippett was waiting at the Oak Cliff end of the viaduct from downtown, the Houston Street Viaduct. I interviewed 3 attendants at the Gold Coast station at the apex of that triangle who knew Tippett by sight. He bought cigarettes from him. They said he was waiting only a few minutes when Tippett laid rubber as he sped into Oak Cliff, pulling up at the boarding house. According to the housekeeper, Oswald was inside getting a handgun from his room. A short time later, after a few blocks away, Oswald got the drop and shot Tippett. Police paraffin test demonstrated that Oswald fired a handgun with 2 hands that day, but did not fire a rifle. In custody, Oswald cried out, "I'm just a patsy." Right on. He'd been set up. This was confirmed by one John V. Martino, a mechanic for Havana casino owner, Mafia Don Santos Trafficante. He claimed to be CIA affiliated, that is, Martino, and a facilitator of the JFK assassination, whatever that means. He kept quiet until 1975 when he told business associate Fred Klassen the anti-Castro people put Oswald together. Oswald didn't know who he was working for. He was just ignorant and was putting the pieces together. Since he was put together presumably during the time period Oswald was infiltrating the Dallas DRE, they reversed the magnetic field, so to speak. This was when the case came down. The DRE militia by officers from Miami visited the Dallas chapter, and they were recruiting and seeking funds for that second invasion. These are 3 military officials of the DRE out of Miami. Oswald was spotted spying on them. Talk about boys with toys. That Ruby was the top level of the mafia, or the National Crime Syndicate as it came to be called. He was under the spell of Leon McWillie. He was ordered to knock off Oswald. A confidential source close to the principals in the case told me that Mo Dallas, a long time, he's out of the Purple Gang of Detroit originally, Dallas of the Desert Inn in Las Vegas, called 3 times for Mel Belli. He was the flamboyant attorney in San Francisco who everybody wanted for his theatrics. And unfortunately for Mel, he was handling a case involving Mickey Cohen, another mobster from Southern California at the time. So the caller, Dallas, in talking to my informant, Dallas said, Mel, he left a message for Mel, tell that SOB who killed my president that we're going to get him. And he wanted to hire somebody that Mel knew for a hired gun to knock off Jack Ruby. So the FBI kept chasing its tail on this investigation and never put it to bed. I think this is new evidence that Justice Warren would entertain as a reopening of the case. In the novel A Coffin for Demetrios, the Turkish police inspector says, the important thing to know about assassination is not who fired the gun, but who paid for the bullet. I think we would want to carry on looking for both. Thanks for inviting me, and a pleasure talking with you. Uh-oh, what you got?
Hello? Let me turn the phone over to him. It's them. They may have questions for you.
Hello? Yes. Thanks, John. Yes, the book is called Thunder at Dawn, and its subtitle has to do with the interview of Fidel Castro by Richard Nixon 4 months after Nixon or Fidel became the ruler of the Cuban Republic. And yeah, and the kicker is that Nixon had already made up his mind that he was going to overthrow the Castro regime, whereas Castro came to the meeting with the idea of proposing a alliance, a strategic alliance between Cuba and the United States, in which Cuba would actively come to the aid of the United States in the event of any difficulty with the Soviet Union. So here we had a chance to advance our national security and carry on with the peace process at the same time, and Nixon blew it. So that's what the book is about, and all the subsequent happenings. The CIA undertook assassination as a method operandi rather than trying to settle things through investigation. So it's pretty much a Nixon versus Castro book. And I know I asked Fidel, he submitted interrogatories for the book. And I asked him if he had personally profited by the currency manipulations that followed the closure of the gambling casinos. And he kind of took offense to the implication that he would pocket anything like that. But anyhow, it's loaded with little snippets of information. But it all goes in the direction of the mob was really running the country. The mob had casinos in Havana, of which Nixon had an interest. The interest was cultivated by Baby Rebozo, who was not an au pair with Nixon, but pretty close. And Nixon was always seen in Havana without Pat, his wife, whereas he would be seen in the Dominican Republic, run by that murderer Trujillo, with Pat. So it appears that Baby Rebozo pretty much ran Nixon's affairs, and he was always seen there to pick up the marker when Nixon lost at the tables. So it's a good story, and it's a very important story to bring out at this time and this place. I'm sorry I didn't bring it out earlier, but I didn't catch the full significance of what the information amounts to. I didn't connect the dots, John, which is a failing for a journalist, but I did it anyhow. Yes. Yes. Well, thanks for all you people who came the distance, and I appreciate your information and your diligence in pursuing one of the most important investigations this country's ever seen. Okay. There we are.